graduated, elevated. Now it's my time to shine. Yeah, let's go. Major moves, power moves. Take it to the top one time, non-stop.
It's probably a longer answer as well.
No, I think that is one of the best answers, in the sense of, I remember my grandparents when I was younger. They used to, if I go, oh, I feel a bit poorly, they would feed me, right? Whether it was a cold, bellyache, they'll be like, if it's coming out, you need something to sustain so that there's no acid inside. And I'm like, no, but it's coming out. They're like, nope, you need to eat stuff with roughage. You need to this is what you need. And literally, she'll be in the kitchen, pound, 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 and she would feed me. But then as I've grown up, I've been told, don't overeat, don't do this. So you get into a state of confusion. What is it that I should actually eat? Because there's so much on the internet in terms of what we should eat and what we shouldn't eat. And I think during my PhD journey as well, put on weight, but I didn't understand why I put on weight.
Yeah.
And, the GP said, oh, you're stressed. And I said, okay, so, how do we get it down? So stop being stressed. Okay, I'm doing a PhD. How do I stop being stressed? You have questions essentially. And I think from your response, you've given us a holistic perspective to say, if there's one, there's always 10. So work through everything. Don't make a fast track process, because then it doesn't work. It's non-linear essentially. Or am I wrong in the way I've summarized?
No, that's perfectly right. Definitely, yes. And when you have a problem, definitely go to your doctor. We have evolved and developed everything around us. So we do need to seek that support and use the support that's available for all of us. But don't wait until there's a problem. We all have our health under our control. And one thing that worked for other person might not work always for you, because you're two unique human beings. So it's definitely not going to support to you beyond an extent.
I love that. Thank you. And in terms of your PhD, then you've since finished. Are we still in academia, or have we moved in industry where you're like, oh, I'm done? What was the excitement like?
Well, after my PhD, I continued in academia, but again, without revealing so much. So I think it's different. It's not just the experience or choice. I really didn't know what I want to do, but I know what I didn't want to do. And that's how I deciphered where I want to be, if that makes sense. But PhD, definitely, people have asked me, so you left academia, do you have regrets doing your PhD? My answer is absolutely not. I loved doing that PhD, and that had empowered me to problem solve. And I think I love problem solving. And the way I problem solve didn't work very well within academia, in the sense I want to bring the universe together to solve the problem in a very collaborative manner. But in academia, as you grow beyond an extent, you become that expert, the niche, whatever. And end of the day, you can't talk about other things, or you deemed that you don't have that experience to talk. But mind you, we don't talk about it, but we try to see the connections there, and we try to bring it all together. And that's how I found what doesn't work for me. And the answer is academia doesn't work for me, because I always get excited and enthusiastic about connecting those bigger stars and the universe together. And that's the reason I moved out of academia, and there were a few experiences which forced me to make that decision sooner, maybe. Then I look back and say, if only that was a better process, I would have stayed there with not that 200% satisfaction and happiness every day. Because I still sometimes like, oh, maybe, I love doing that lab experiments, running and doing, but now I see the bigger picture and bigger calling. So sometimes things are meant to be the way it is. Keep searching for what you want always, what makes you happy. Never settle with anything lesser than that. I mean, I've had days where my experiments were totally failure during my PhD, but still I was able to have a sense of accomplishment every day because I did my best. This is to my best ability, and I sought help beyond that, beyond my ability, and I tried to push my boundaries every day to learn something new and support my experiment there. It's fine if it fails. That's the attitude which helped me go through PhD in particular, like because everything is new, you got to settle with a new place, settle with that autonomy. You've given that autonomy, but at the same time, you got to take steers from someone and to walk into a road which no one had walked through. Every single PhD is a new journey in this world. It's a lot of unknown, and that discipline of do your best, and my satisfaction that I want to do PhD, not for a paper, not for a academic tenure, not for a whatever job, not for anything, because that's beyond whatever comes is look into it later. But this experience will give me that qualification of now you can solve any problem independently. And if you read anything, including the most complex peer-reviewed journals, you can understand. And with my PhD, if I go and talk about anything, they would trust me. But if you don't have a PhD, obviously you're left out with the peer-reviewed journals. So this is why I wanted my PhD, and definitely I'm happy with what I've been through. And yeah, I'm not in industry, by the way, but I don't want to reveal on my current space. Yeah.
No, I believe the way you've expressed yourself is maybe probably how we all feel sometimes, essentially, because I worked in industry and I said I got into a PhD because I was tired of introducing myself, essentially, and stating certain things, and the room would not hear me. And I know with the doctor title, essentially, not that it will give me everything or it is everything, but to other people it is everything, and they will hear me a bit better, essentially. And maybe I will have that impact in terms of the wider community and my vision of what I think should be done in certain environments when it comes to career development, salaries, etc., etc. So I think, the way you've shared, there are certain elements in the environment that will push you even harder, but I want to say it is destiny, essentially. So moving on to the next question, which is on publications. Do you feel fulfilled then when you publish, or do you feel like, I'm just doing it because I have to?
Look, it's a double-edged sword to answer this question, because publications for me, I'm still fighting for certain things, which is academics. Publication is for me more like your fair pay. It's part of your salary because you do a work and that's what completes it. So it's a double-edged sword when I answer yes or no, but I always looked beyond publications. What next? And publication is the journey, and it is one of the key milestone or hurdle you should tick off to go to the next level of your research. And for that purpose, I've always felt fulfilled and satisfied when I publish. Not that I've published many, I've only published a few, but with publications, yes, I feel fulfilled because I've ticked off and I've gone to the next level. My research can be taken to the next level, which is maybe a clinical trial or maybe another testing in a industry setup for a therapy. That's what is going to take it to the community. So publication is a key milestone there. And for that reason, I feel satisfied. But when I published my PhD, finding some like, oh yes, this is right in the lab setup, but it's a lot more complex in the clinical setup with patients, and my another new search starts there. Does it answer your question?
It does, which leads me on to the next question, which is, as PhDs or doctoral students, we are often I wouldn't say it's pressure essentially, but we are informed that it is wise for us to publish, and then you're under duress essentially to publish. Do you think it fair that we know essentially to get a job, we have to have like good publications, as they call it, in good journals? Or do you think actually you're just starting up in your career, maybe a bit of leniency to say,
Totally, it's wrong to expect someone to publish to get a job. And this is why it's more like my pay, because in my second job, I can use my first job's salary to negotiate. And when I go into academia, you use your publications to negotiate. I've published in XYZ in these journals, and then that bumps up my probability of being interviewed. So it's totally unfair to look into publications for your employment as an early career postdoc. And I think, if I'm not wrong, Netherlands is one country where they said someone should start, and we've started, not counting on the publications for early career researchers, and I loved it. The other side is, yes, everyone's put under pressure, and sometimes that leads to inappropriate actions, which has been largely my concern. So sometimes you don't force someone to, an example in the common world, why would you force someone to steal burglary if that person has their basic needs covered? In a normal, you're forcing them into poverty, and then you're forcing them to do inappropriate things because they need to survive. That's the same thing I see, and it's a personal view, but that's what I see with postdocs. And again, as an early career, you don't have a loud voice, or your loud voice may not be heard, or that might act against your career. So people tend to be low-key, even when they think certain things are not going the way it should. They try to quietly support because that's going to support their career. I feel that pressure of publishing forces many people to breach many of their own personal codes, values, which is brutal as a human being. And that's one reason why, again, I moved out of academia.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing your opinion, which leads me on to this question, which is, do you have any words of encouragement in terms of someone who wants to resign their PhD because they feel like it's such a toxic environment and they can't do it anymore?
So resign the PhD is a very tricky question. It's more like the treasure hunter who digs 7 feet down and gives up, walk away, and the second treasure hunter comes in and digs 1 feet down, and then they find the treasure. So never quit your PhD. It's always going to be, it's not going to be a bed of roses, even in the best environments, best colleague, peers, supervisors. It can sometimes turn toxic because of these factors, which are outside our control. And I was at that spot many times. Your true purpose for a PhD will drive you during that times. What is your purpose? And mind you, I grew up in a third world country, and for us, survival is every day, and we were taught to fight, 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 never give up. And at that time, I haven't heard many people talk to me about mental health. But on a positive note, maybe that's where I learned to be persevere and grow resilient to anything. Keep my head clear, focus towards what I want on these or from these. That's kept me going. But if someone thinks that this is way too much on me, definitely weigh your pros and cons and what you lose. The bargain there would be, are you happy to let go of your hard work? Maybe if you're done after 2 years, 3 years, because end of the day, it's your satisfaction, which is much more important than anything. Never have a regret. When you look back, you should not feel bad about what you lost, because obviously there's 100 other people to grab that and keep running from there. If you're happy to let go of that, you're happy to leave your PhD straight away. But if today I only think of my today's mental health in this toxic place or in whichever toxic place, tomorrow my mental health will once again be impacted because of this. When you see that work that you nearly finished and someone else picked it up and published without knowing anything about that work, that's a different story to talk about. But you would really have that long distress and disappointment that will again make your mental health worse. So where your benefits, only that individual knows where they stand and what they can make. Again, there's no right or wrong decisions. Whatever works for you today and for your future is the right decision.
Yeah, thank you very much. And that really neatly ties into the next question, which is the second to last, you'll be glad to know, which is, do you think higher education breaks the poverty life cycle, or do you think actually no, it doesn't work? You can get a master's, you can get, DBA, and, you're still in poverty. Or do you think, do you know what? It is really good because then you're able to move your bodiless essentially, and you can apply for certain positions that you wouldn't have the opportunity to apply for? Or do you think, no, Noma? What are your thoughts?
I don't think I can give a straightforward response with your question. If you're happy to take that confusing mixed response, I'm happy to talk about.
Sure.
So education took my parents including my mom, to get into full employment compared to their own siblings, which I've seen in comparison with my cousins. Our lifestyle was much better than their lifestyle. And so, which means we've come out of poverty because of education. But again, when I studied, we had all engineers, like it was a default during my times, where you qualify from your HSC, you go into engineering college, that's the bare minimum. And after 4 years, we had more than 50% of the graduated engineers who were unemployed, cursing their lives. They are in debt because they spend a lot more for engineering than for arts and science college. So they become poor because of this engineering that they've studied. So picking the right higher education for the right purpose helps. Everyone, just because something worked for someone, it's not appropriate and ideal for you. Make your own choices based on your circumstance. But moving that poverty line, definitely to some extent. But if in a city they get education and everyone's visionary towards educating all your kids so that you can move up the poverty line. But unfortunately, if the government, not against any government, but unfortunately, if the government focus too much on education and forget to invest in industries that will support these qualified engineers or qualified students, again, they remain in the same line. It's a holistic approach in the community or the social status or social development. Hopefully that convinces you.
It does answer the question, because I've spoken to somebody he told me it's Colombia. I think I say Colombia, whatever I say. But anyway, he's from there, and he said to me that because the government hadn't invested in agriculture, literally his PhD was redundant because there's only 2 or 3 other people in the country who had that. And then I spoke to somebody in Ireland, and he was like, well, do you know what? I'm in debt. I've just got student loans, and then I spoke to somebody in Nigeria who was like, do you know what? I was able to leave Nigeria, and now I'm in the US. My life has changed because I can afford to look after myself. even though I'm not getting a lot of money, but I can have my breakfast and my lunch and my dinner and make sure mum's all right back home. So it's, you know, it's not a straight answer. I think that's where I'm going with this. It's different for everybody. Just as you said, it, you know, it's dependent on the individual and what you want to study. So in terms of the last question, then, it's just on PhD Hard Talk. You're here on the platform. Do you think it's a good idea, or do you think it's a bad idea? And also, do you think it's beneficial for universities, or Noma, just call it a day, it's not working? Finito.
Sorry, what is it for the PhD, or what do you think?
No, PhD Hard Talk, the platform that you're on today.
The
Yeah.
platform as such, yeah.
Yes.
Well, I think you can do a lot more in the space of helping. Well, that's my passion, helping students to find or do the right things for themselves. And talking about science, yes, there are a lot of scientists who talk about their science, all the flowery things, but there's not many who talk about the hurdles and difficulties. I think we're setting wrong expectations for the PhD students, and maybe you can support setting the right expectations, not about all gloomy cry compliance, but when people talk, they should be able to demonstrate what's beyond and still a purpose, which will help people search for their own purposes and then do the right thing. Sometimes I've had conversations with people. I'm a devil's advocate all the time, and I like to say all the nasty bad things in anything that someone wants to do, not just PhD or anything. Look, these are the implications. Are you sure you want to still step onto it? And I think asking that question before you make the decision will help them persevere through the completion rather than dropping halfway through. You know what the worst that can happen. Anything that comes on top of it is a benefit and a bonus for you. So PhD Hard Talks, please do that towards supporting the students on understanding the real color of what PhD is. Nothing wrong about it. There are different colors. It's not always you will come in a front pager, you found this one, you are a Nobel laureate. No, there's so many researchers, everyone works towards it. There's only one Nobel Prize per subject every whatever years. So I think showing that reality will help people make those wise decisions for themselves. And universities can have less dropouts. If people make those strong decisions, knowing all the ins and outs, less dropouts, more passionates or passion towards during the difficult times. And I'm sure universities will say how many cases, how many complaints, how many students come back to say, I don't get enough supervision. It's the structure that it is. So if they know that these are the problems they're going to have, they're already planning their mitigations, and you can do a lot more in that space.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I've mentioned previously to say sometimes when you go on Twitter and you see all the memes of, you know, what the actual reality is, it can be misleading, or it can, in a good or bad way. Let's say if the TL, everything is just gloomy, you think, oh my gosh, what have I walked into? But then sometimes when there's a good mixture and the debate is there and everybody's saying, well, actually, good supervisor, I've had a bad one, but this is what I've learned, this is what you can do. So it can be very educational, and, you know, take it on board. We'll try and do better and move everything forward. So thank you very much for sharing, for your time today, and for teaching us essentially about oncology. So that was lovely. Thank you again. And if you want to find out more information about, I'll say Fernando because I think I've forgotten. Please look at the bottom. All information will be on there. And if there's no response, sometimes we get a bit busy. Give us a bit of time and we will respond in time. Thank you again for your time. And it was lovely having this discussion with you.
Thanks, Noma. Likewise. Looking forward to hear more of the scientists talk in your forum. Thank you.